Hey there, happy Easter, everyone. It's Sunday, April 5th, 2026. And in case you're new here, I'm Awesome Austin. This is video 4 in my my April is Financial Literacy Month series. All right, now, before I get into today's topic, I want to first tell you a little bit more about myself. And a little more about me, why I'm doing this, okay? I think it's pretty obvious to those who know me that I'm not motivated by money or flashy things the same way it seems like most people are. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think it's necessary for our survival, right? How do we live without money? And I believe it to be a great tool, okay? We work for our money and we trade it for our necessities. What's the alternative, right? We spend all our time hunting for food, tanning leather, right? So our moccasins are sewing our moccasins, foraging, farming, hoping we can put aside enough food to survive the winter, right? We're carrying water, we're collecting sticks to keep the fire going so that we don't freeze to death in the winter time. Right, the barter system is great to a certain point, but what if I want to trade, say my watermelons, my strawberries, whatever I got, my fish, for this guy who's selling thread? Well, he has no need for my goods, so I can't get any thread to fix up my moccasins. What am I going to do? Am I going to go barefoot all winter? Can you imagine having to carve your own sewing needle from a bone or whatever, etc.? Okay, so my point here is, well, I really don't care about money. I do believe it's a necessary tool, right? It's a necessary bartering tool. Can you imagine, everybody, we all want to we all daydream of living off the land, but have you ever really thought about what that takes? It's a lot of work. I think I'd much rather work for my money and pay for my goods, pay for my necessities, right? Okay? So now, why do I bring this up? Okay, I truly value knowledge over money. And those of you who know me will attest to that. Okay? And we all know that knowledge is power, right? So, I'm way more motivated by helping others, sharing with others, than I am by monetary gain, okay? So don't get me wrong. I'm still a salesman, right? I still have to put food on the table, clothes on my back, provide for my family. So, what's my main motivator to make these videos? Honestly, it's to share my knowledge and open the discussion, right? It's all kind of just my assumptions, right? Without peer review. So please, if you ever disagree with me, tell me why in the comments, okay? If that's you, if you disagree with me, I'm calling you out. I want to hear more from you than from anyone, okay? If you find any value in this content, also let me know that too, right? So my main purpose here is to open the discussion, okay? I don't want to just rant. I don't want to just hear myself talk. I want to open these topics to your criticism. Okay, so that we can have a rational discussion, okay? If I'm wrong, set me straight, please. It's your duty to set me straight. That way I'm not leading others to build their financial house on a sinkhole or quicksand, right? So, I believe the topics that I've covered and the topics that I will be covering are the solid bedrock to build on, right? So if you can do anything for me, please It's correct me if I'm wrong. Okay? Now, how can you critique today's topic when I haven't even hit one yet? Okay? So, enough rant. Let's get into it. Alright, so today we're talking about BTID. Right? Drop a 1 in the chat if you already know what that stands for. Okay, that's BTID. This is one of the most debated topics in the financial industry. Okay, in case you don't know, I'm talking about buy the term, invest the difference. Okay, now, this debate has been going on for over 50 years. Okay, this is controversy. Okay, it may take more time than I have today, so stay with me through the entire series and share your comments below. Before I dive deeper into this dispute, let me share a little bit about the history of this phrase. Okay. Now, of course, the general concept of buying cheaper coverage to save money, that's probably existed for about as long as insurance itself, right? Okay, but it was Art Williams Jr. in the 1970s who officially coined and popularized the slogan, buy term and invest the difference. Okay? So, what got him so passionate about this, okay? He turned this phrase into a massive movement, okay, that would last for over 5 decades, right? And what was the catalyst that made Art so passionate about this, okay? He was a high school football coach before becoming an insurance agent, okay? He became that after his father passed away. Now, Art felt that his father had been sold a whole life policy that provided too little coverage for too much money, okay? Now, Art was convinced a term life policy would have provided a much larger safety net for his family for the same cost, okay? And it likely would have. So, I do agree with Art's rationale for feeling this way. And also, I must admit that Art is correct about term life providing more coverage for the same or less cost, okay? I do personally believe, however, that term coverage is a bit more of a gamble, okay? We're going to break that down soon. So, for example, if Art's father had lived longer, he likely would have seen more benefit from that whole life policy, right? Now, vice versa, if Art's dad had purchased a term policy, but then outlived it, would Art have been, maybe upset that his father invested for years, 10, 15, 30 years, and and all that, paid for all that coverage for nothing? Okay, so let me discuss the key differences for a moment while we're here on this part of things. Okay, so term life offers temporary coverage with lower fixed premiums. All right, but no cash value. Okay, that's term life. Now, this is great, assuming that you die before the end of the term, okay, generally 10 to 30 years. Whole life, on the other hand, provides lifelong, permanent coverage. It also has fixed premiums, but it'll build a cash value, okay, cash accumulation. But it does cost more. Now, depending on the chosen amount of coverage, it can be a significantly higher cost, okay? So why is that? Well, what's the expectancy that you will die at some point in your life? Right? That's right. It's 100%. Okay? So you can see why a whole life policy will come with a higher cost. Okay? The chances of a whole life policy paying out to your beneficiaries, 100%. Okay? While the likelihood of a term life policy paying out to beneficiaries is much, much lower. Okay? Hence my views on term life being a gamble. Okay? I'm not trying to say that one is better than the other. Okay? Just trying to call it like I see it. There's a place for both, depending on your situation and who you are. Now, the insurance company is betting that you will not die during the term, right? That's why it costs less, especially while you're younger, okay? Now, if a lower cost is your main concern, then maybe you want term life, right? But consider this. The lower cost of that term life can be a double-edged sword, okay? Let's break this down. So if you outlive the term and need to renew the policy, right, now your costs or premiums will likely rise dramatically rise based on your attained age at the time of renewal, okay? So, term is ideal for temporary income replacement, while whole life is generally better suited for lifetime financial planning. Okay? Are you with me still? Do you understand where I'm coming from there? Now, when Art's father was purchasing his whole life policy, was he planning on passing away early? I doubt it, right? Of course not. Otherwise, he'd have bought a term and higher coverage, less pay, happy guy. He didn't plan that way. He was building his financial house on the solid foundational expectation, right, that he would outlive a term policy. Hence the whole life, the cash value, accumulation, blah, blah, blah. All right. So let me ask you, when do you plan to die? Seriously, when do you plan to die? That's a loaded question, right? Right. Okay, we just don't know, do we? So, do you want to plan your future one term at a time? Or would you prefer to plan for your whole life? Just pause to let that sink in a little. Right? I like to plan for my whole life. Now, I do have a lot more to cover on this buy the term, invest the difference topic, right? But it's really all the time I have for today. So, be sure to join me again tomorrow when I cover more about Art's mission. Why? Okay, we'll cover more about why it potentially made more sense in his era than now, right? Over 50 years later, we're talking about the now. And I'll explain more about why I feel this way, okay? And, I just can't wait to have your input on this. I want to open the discussion, okay? So thanks for staying with me until the end. I'm excited to hear your opinions in the comments, or you can reach me directly. As always, my email is in the description, okay? And of course, don't forget, the best things in life aren't things.